Liz. Thanks for coming on my podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad that I finally got the gumption up to contact you. I don't even know if it was the gumption. I had found out about you and it's Margarett, right?
That's right, yes.
They have Psychic Kids United, and I had been looking at it in October, and this is when I just started creating the podcast. And I just kind of wrote it in my book, and I hadn't come to it, even though I look at it constantly. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And
You were directed to. Your
right.
higher powers were directing you, right?
Yep. So then it was when May hit, it was like red flag time. You need to contact them. And so I'll be doing a two-parter. I'll be doing one with you, and I'll be doing one with Margarett, because you're two different people. You had two different histories, different abilities, and why not? So
Exactly.
I got the space. So I'm going to start just at the beginning. So could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm a psychic medium empath. That's probably the best way to describe who I am. Basically, I have been doing this my whole life. I didn't really hone my mediumship skills till later in life. And I didn't actually really know that I was a psychic, to be honest with you, until I hit my 20s. So although I can look back now in hindsight and go, yeah, you were a psychic, there was never that term, or formal understanding that that's what I was doing. I did see a psychic. My mom would have them come to the house, and I saw a woman for the first time when I was 10, and she told me that I was going to be doing what she's doing when I'm older, and I laughed at her. I was like, yeah, I don't think so, because I was a very shy, overwhelmed child, very sensitive to outside influences, other people, that kind of thing. And at the time, it didn't seem abnormal to me, but looking back, I can go, yeah, I was overwhelmed. I had a lot of spirit visitations that freaked me out, like scary things like that. But for the most part, I had, you asked me a little bit about me, and I'm kind of going off on another direction here.
Oh, I'm fine with it.
Sorry. So basically, it wasn't until I hit my 20s that I literally realized, yeah, Liz, there's something to this. People are coming to you for advice, and you're giving them the right advice, but then you're telling them stuff that's going to happen. And I guess I always assumed everybody felt like that. So it just didn't seem abnormal to me. And then over the years, I have trained. I'm a registered life coach. I did, before the registered life coaching, I was doing a thing called soul coaching, which was basically taking my intuition and my guidance to another level, where I was working one-on-one with people over like 2 or 3 different sessions, instead of doing just readings. So I kind of did that. I've done Reiki. I have done, just a host of different things, just off the top of my head. It's not coming to me, but Psychic Kids United came into play because I was getting a lot of parents and a lot of children coming through my door for readings. And so I had been having this vibration, or this awareness, that I needed to create a place for parents and for their kids to come that have highly in tune children, because it was an overwhelming experience for me. I didn't realize how overwhelming it was until later in life. Again, going back, looking at all the different things, it was kind of like, just deal with it, just kind of deal with it. And after connecting with a lot of others in the community, I realized that we all went through very similar experiences growing up. And our parents didn't really have the resources or the tools, a majority of them. Some had parents that were already psychic or medium and were actively participating in that role. But for the most part, it was a daunting experience growing up, being in tune to others, seeing what we call dead people. We call them spirit. And having insight as to what others what was going to come up in others' lives, or if, as an empath, you would really recognize when people weren't being truthful with you. So that made it difficult to be friends with a lot of people. And it was just a series of events that got me to that awareness. So through life, that kind of took me to the place where I am today. And I do it full time now. I work full time as a psychic, and I've launched Psychic Kids United, and it's an exciting time. An exciting time for sure.
It's nice to spread too. That's probably why you have your hands in so many things, because it's just so nice to experience different things and see where it takes you.
Yes.
I just out of interest, circling back to your childhood, did your parents, were you say you look back now and realize, but do you think your parents had any idea of your abilities?
Well, my parents were pretty in tune as well. But we didn't really think of them as, in tune people. They were just really interested in the unknown, spirit. They had a lot of experiences. I can remember a time, I was about 5 or 6 at the time, and we lived in an old farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. Okay. So there was like a 45-minute drive just to get to school. And so we were pretty isolated, and we had this big cornfield to one side and a big cornfield to the other side. And then you could see way off in the distance the other neighbors. Well, one morning we woke up getting ready for school. My dad was there and my mom was there, and we were in the kitchen, and there was this big window in the kitchen where you would do the dishes, and you could see out across this cornfield. And this fog had been rolling in. And my dad and I were standing at the kitchen window, and he's like, do you see that? Do you see that, Lizzie? And I'm like, I do. There's 2 people walking in the field. And he goes, I'm going to go out and see if they're okay. Because they looked like an older couple, like they were sort of hunched over and slowly walking through the cornfield, which was literally, a kilometer. Like it was huge. This huge as a child, it probably wasn't as big as I remember it as, but it was enormous, this field. And remember, we were not really close to any neighbors. So it was just an abnormal thing to see somebody walking on your property, especially in a cornfield in a foggy day. So my dad got up and went outside to go and see if these people needed help, if they were lost, because they were actually heading towards the woods, which would have taken them into nothing land, right? So the road was the other way. And he went out the door, and he's like, hello, and we all kind of ran out after him. My mom, all of us saw them, and he's like, hey, and the fog came and sort of covered them. And so my dad just kind of, started walking towards in the direction that they were, and they weren't there. When he got there, the fog lifted completely. Like there was literally no fog anywhere, which was very strange within itself. And there was nobody, and there was unless they started sprinting, which, even if they had done that, it would have been impossible for us to not see them, running away. So that was probably my first real memory of actually seeing an apparition, and my parents being very confused by it and freaked out by it. And, you all saw that, right? Like we all saw that, and we were all like, yeah, we all saw that. But at the same time, they were curious. So they let us be curious. So there wasn't a fear so much as that's crazy. That term was used a lot. And just the unknown, like, what does that mean? And then I came to realize as I was older that farmhouse itself was very alive. There were doors opening and closing. I just became accustomed to it. But I never liked being upstairs by myself. And I was the youngest, so I always had to go to bed early, the first one, and I didn't like it at all. So just things like that would happen throughout my childhood. And when my grandfather passed away, similar sort of situation. He came back, and I knew it was him, but I didn't physically see him like I had seen the other spirits. But he was playing with the door and jamming, like playing with the door handle, and trying to open and close the door. So these were like things that kind of happened back to back, where I can look back and say, those were really the most scary as a 5-year-old to me. What was that? How can my adult people not explain that to me?
Yeah.
And then I became sort of fearful of the unknown. And it was at that early age that I became very fearful. And that kind of set me on a path of fear-based reality until I hit my 20s. So I don't want that to happen to parents like yourself and or to children, because there's literally nothing to be afraid of, except for fear itself. And that's what I'm hoping Psychic Kids United will bring to the table, will help eliminate the need to be in fear, because when we don't know something, the logical reaction is to go into fear, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm assuming that then the fact that your parents, you said they had psychics come in, your mother had psychics come in, which to me, that's pretty forward for the time anyway.
I guess it was, but to me that was normal.
Yeah. And you were in a rural area. So she had to have, at least the curiosity, you know?
Yeah. Well, my mother's very gifted as well, very sensitive. And my father's mother was very, I would classify her as a psychic, but in the time frame that I knew her, nobody would have classified her as a psychic, but she was the person that had everybody come to her house for tea throughout the day to have a chat. And it was like, your grandmother gives such great advice. I remember hearing that all the time, and I'm thinking, looking back on it, I can go, yeah, she wasn't classifying herself as a psychic, but clearly she was. And she had a finger on the pulse of everybody. She gave great advice. People just came from everywhere to see her all the time. She was very connected to other people's lives, which is kind of how, when you're empathic, you don't really have a choice, right? Like, you just are. But being a psychic, being able to take all that and help them sort future events and present events it's huge, right? So definitely have it in my lineage, just it wasn't classified as, as such.
It's so interesting to me to watch other people's saying that it's in their lineage or not, or that they could see, I haven't been able to see it on my lineage side, but I have a very strong feeling that that it is there. And I know, like, it might be people that I'm not with or have passed away.
Yeah.
And also too, I think because there was so much trauma and poverty and stuff, it was like, we just need to eat.
Yes.
And not be, not get in a street fight. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to survive.
Exactly.
So I think they may have been using it for other reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. And because you got so fixated on the way you were raised, and like, we were the same, living very poorly. What were we going to eat today? It was very limited, but I didn't at the time know that, as a child, I wasn't aware of that. I can look back now and go, wow, like, we were really poor back then. But so you're in survival mode when you're living in a life like that, and it's about being in survival mode, opposed to thriving, right? Which is where we need to be today, right?
Yeah.
In thrive mode.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to fast forward a bit, and I'm going to go into, I don't know which one you want to go to first, you having children or how you came to Psychic Kid United. Well, Psychic Kid United comes after, so maybe chronologically we'll go with you having children of your own.
Yeah. Well, I have one daughter of my own, Stephanie. She's 25 now. And I have a stepson, Ian, and a stepdaughter, Allie, with my husband, Andrew. And my daughter definitely was the awakening for me. I tell everybody I really woke up when she came into my life. Like, I was kind of on the path just before having the awareness, but the minute she showed up in my life, that was like, you don't get to have your eyes closed anymore. You are super, super aware now, and you don't get to pretend that this isn't happening anymore. And I think that was kind of similar what happened to you, right?
Yes, yeah.
When children were born, that was like, wake up, you don't get to be asleep anymore. So she came into the world, this absolutely beautiful young lady who everybody was drawn to. And I remember thinking I couldn't take her anywhere without strangers, like droves of strangers wanting to come up and touch her. And oh my goodness, can I talk to her? And she'd just sit there and smile, just attracting every soul to her. And I remember thinking, I just can't take her out in public because I was a bit, well, I don't know if it was depression, but it was certainly anxiety that I suffered. And I can remember just people coming over to me created like a flight or fight kind of syndrome. Like I needed to get out of there. But what was happening was all these people coming, it forced me to accept. And that was kind of cool because I was quite a different woman pre having her to when I started to have to get in public. You probably discovered the same thing.
My daughter was the same way, not so much my son. So it was kind of nice though, because it wasn't so much that draw with my son, but I had my daughter and they looked pretty similar. And I had like old people coming over the hills, throwing their walkers out of the way. And it wasn't that it was just a baby.
Yeah.
It was something more. And I could sit there and I wasn't like dressing her particularly cute or anything like that. And I noticed that too. And then so when the activity in my house started and I had said to the psychic and she said, oh, it's not your house, it's your daughter. I was like, well, that makes sense because all these alive people are doing the same stuff.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I likened it to like over the years, I've gotten a really good connection with my spirit guides. So I have a lot of conversations and I recommend everybody does this. And, just a short and sweet of it is basically ask the questions of your guides and then ask them to answer you. I hear my own voice and it will be their wisdom, but in my own voice. And I often think like, why don't I hear it in like a different voice? But it's not, I think if I would have heard a different voice, it would have made me think there was something wrong with me. So I think they just worked that way with me, but I follow my inner wisdom from them. So I would ask questions like, why is she attracting all these people? And they would say, she's empathic. She has a huge, beautiful energy, which, she's getting it from you. You already have this, but I was learning as this was all going on, as were you, right? Like really taking it all in at that time. And she just, even to this day, her ability to manifest, like that's one of her greatest superpowers is her manifestation powers. She can get whatever she desires. It just, oh, sorry, my thing went off there. She just blows me away with her ability to call in whatever it is she desires. And that's one of the key things that I had to learn from her because I played a very negative role in my head more often than not. I would play the victim, feeling overwhelmed or life doesn't work out for me the way I want it to. And she was the one that woke me up to, no, you just have to desire it and it will follow you. It will find you. So just kind of cool things that our kids teach us that we're unaware that they do. But in hindsight, we can go, yeah, thank goodness for her because I wouldn't be who I am today. Right.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I think about that all the time. And yes, I feel like people walk around and like, I'm just so thankful. Even before I had kids, I'm just so thankful I had my kids and like no love. Yes, I do agree with that. But it's like on a whole new level. Me understanding myself, understanding connection, understanding just even really taking into consideration that they're a mirror. And so I'll be watching something they're doing and I do slow up or I give it a lot of time because I'm going, okay, this obviously has something to do with me. Let me watch and figure out what it is.
Yes.
And I even try and do that with my pets too, because that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, for sure.
It really taught me to watch their connection.
Yes.
Yeah, big time.
Kids are so pure and so unadulterated with any kind of outside influences. Like they are so pure when it comes to connection. We've been sort of filtering through a lifetime of fears, religious beliefs, educational beliefs. We've been filtered through, so we've been sort of corrupted, by the time we got to adulthood, that I can remember thinking, I just don't connect properly. Like, I can see all my other friends making great connections with others, but I don't want to be around people for long periods of time. Like, I'm different from them. Like, they can hang out with each other 24/7 and they're not affected by it. I get overwhelmed. So I need a lot of downtime. I remember thinking, these people know exactly what group they want to belong to in high school, and I didn't belong to any groups. I couldn't. I had connections with every single group, but I didn't belong to any. And that made me feel really distant and different and weird. Like, I didn't feel like I belonged in high school. I remember thinking that was just a strange place for me to be. And I ended up leaving high school in grade 11. I had 4 credits to get, but I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I can't be here any longer. Too daunting, too overwhelming. So I ended up leaving and going back. When my daughter was born, I went back to school and got my high school diploma. I only needed 4 credits. Like, it was so silly. But by that time, I was like, now I actually want to do this, and it's on my terms. And it was a completely different experience because it was all adults. So just made a big difference. But a lot of your viewers who have children who are going through this experience and not knowing how to cope or deal with it, I can remember just how overwhelming it was for me with my daughter. And there's so much more education out there now. And I think that's kind of the goal of Psychic Kids, to take that air of mystery off of what this is. Because what is this? How are we able to read each other's minds? These children read minds now. They connect with us on a soulful level. And how as a parent can I be, looking at the child and going, okay, I do this with my granddaughter. An example would be, she's 8, and I went to an assembly where she was getting an award, and she had spilt something on her shirt. And I remember seeing her and waving, hi, and she's like, hi, Emma, and I'm like, oh, she's got something on her shirt. Now, just because that would be my hang up, standing up in front of the public with some stain down my shirt, I projected that onto her. And where she was really happy, the minute my mind's thinking, oh, she looked down at her shirt. Now, she's in an audience, she can't hear me, and I wasn't saying the words, but she could hear my inner voice. And she literally looked down at her shirt. She walked up holding the top, like where the stain was, and walked up onto the stage. I projected that onto her, and I felt so bad about that. So we have to be so careful about what we think and how we think it, because they're taking it on as, oh, this isn't good, but it was just a kid with a stain. Nobody cared about that. They were cheering for her because she got an award, So it's so important that we really pay attention to our thoughts, not only for them, and I think they're teaching us to pay attention to our thoughts for us. I think that's why this is happening.
Yes.
I think it's all about us, not so much about them. It's more about us getting back on track, right? So,
yeah, I obviously, if people have listened to this podcast, have experienced that huge on my end, and my whole thought process has had to change immensely. Yeah. I want to circle back with the teen stuff, because I feel like more often than not, with these teens, they do feel this way. I don't have a teen, but I can say that with high school, I got along great, but I was the same way with you, as in I wasn't really necessarily in a group, but I did have connections with everybody. Yeah. I don't feel like it affected me as much, only because I kind of took the stance as the observer. Like,
that's very common.
Yeah, I wasn't being picked on or anything like that, but I just felt like I was always observing. So I just was kind of left alone, and I was getting good enough grades, and it was fine.
Yeah.
But I wanted to circle back, especially parenting a teen that's highly intuitive, highly sensitive, because even if you don't feel that your child is, like, it's obvious now going into this what bedlam is going on in these high schools and these poor kids. But like, to narrow it down, I'm going to ask you about what it was like to parent a teen that was highly intuitive and highly sensitive.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. I'm not gonna lie. I have a great hairdresser to hide all the gray. Yeah, no, it wasn't fun, but I can look back on it and go, wow, you know, like the experience wasn't just about me navigating that era with her. It was waking up to my own insecurities, my own judgments, because judgment's a huge player in dealing with others, right? So whether they're your child or not, we're all persecutors, right? We all want a perfect family, the perfect kid, and our kids, our tuned kids, our sensitive kids, don't fit into the perfect box, right? They are complicated, they're sensitive. Things that we wouldn't think would make them sensitive, they're off the chart sensitive with, and things that you would think would really trigger them, they're not. So being a mother to a teenage girl, and I was a single mother to boot, so it was a challenge, but I tried to be as like liberal and as honest emotionally as I could be with her. I felt that that was super important for me to speak the truth with her. I think once they get to that 13-year mark, and I find that with kids that I have as clients that come through the door here, once they hit about that 13 years, they just want to know. You'll hear that, like, just tell me the truth, you know, like they don't want to know that Santa doesn't exist, but they want to know, you know, and like that's younger kids, but it's just being completely honest, not only, you know, with what their actions are bringing. My daughter actually brought it up today because we were talking about her daughter who wasn't listening to leave the house today, and she said, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, Peyton. And she goes, do you remember you used to say that to me all the time, Mom? I said, yeah, but it wasn't that I had to be the punisher. It was that her actions would lead her on a path to a reaction. So that took probably about a year and a half to really sink in for her. And I remember the day she got it, and she was about 17 years old. She started dating this really not good choice of a boyfriend. And I, you know, she's 17. The laws here, once they're 16, they get to make their own rules, and you have no sort of, you know, control over them. Because I'm in Canada, so the school was giving her counseling on one level, and she was wanting to move out at 17, if you can imagine. And I can remember saying, you know what, I'm not, the only way she would be able to do that is if I said that she wasn't allowed to live at home, and she would get governmental funding to do this. And I remember saying, I'm not going to give you permission to leave. You have a home, and you just don't like the rules. And so I found that by doing that, she still left, but she didn't have the financial, like, it wasn't like she was having a hard life. She was getting fed, she had a roof over her head, a mom that loved her, just wasn't wanting to follow the rules. And she was emotionally pulled in different directions from the friend base that she had. And basically, long story short, she lasted about a month and moved back in and begged me to forgive her because it wasn't exactly what she had planned it to be. Now, that's an extreme case. That doesn't always happen. But I was clear with her. You have to be so truthful and clear. And it scared me because I thought, I don't want to not have a connection with my daughter. I think a lot of parents parent around fear. I don't want to say the wrong thing because they're older, and I don't want them to not like me for the rest of their life. We have a big agenda with that with parents right now. And I can just remember thinking, I have to trust that this is her path. And that even though I know it's the craziest path she could go down, I have to trust that she's going to recover from this. And she did. Thankfully, she did. Now, I know that doesn't always happen. Um, but I also believe that there are mitigating circumstances that happen in other people's lives. And I'm sure that a lot of people watching this will have different levels and varieties of, you know, my kid's just not listening when I tell them to do something, or they don't meet curfew. That was the other thing. She wasn't meeting curfew. And I had to sit her down and say, like, when you don't show up, it feels like that you could die. That's what it feels like to me. Like, I had to get real extreme with her. and she didn't understand that I wasn't just trying to be a hardcore mom, like, you need to be home at this time. I'm like, I feel like I will never see you again if you don't make a connection with me and tell me where you are and who you're with and come home at this time. You have to understand that's the way it has to work, because psychically I'm feeling overwhelmed that you're going to this place or what have you. And then she would call me and say, yeah, you're right. This place isn't good. Can you come get me? And so that's another thing with parents. They have to keep that channel open, no matter how frustrated you get with them. I often give this advice to parents: never take it personally. You can't take what your kids say and do to you as a personal agenda towards you. They will point at you and they will blame you for all their problems. But don't take it personally. It's just their way of sorting out their own selves. They have to get, I mean, if we can all go back and remember what it was like being a teenager, it was crazy, right? We all had our own personal challenges, but sensitive kids have the overwhelming need of exploring, getting to know what makes people tick, you know, so they'll bring in people that they need to rescue. That's a big thing for these types of kids. They seem to bring in, you know, a lot of challenged or troubled or overwhelmed kids into their friend circle, and it's kind of their way of healing their friends, if that makes sense.
Well,
So
does it play into like their bigger picture game, like their bigger purpose?
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like that was always my perception, is like they're here to help with the healing of the world.
yeah,
And so like this is like our steps into it, little steps, you know, it's
sure.
scary for adults. I was also hearing too, from some other parents that their teens, I don't know if they know it or not, but they block their parents. So, and I think also too, that's like the universe also blocking you, like you are getting too far in and you need to let them play out this, they need to do this to help them on later on down the road.
They need to scrape their knees. They do. They need to scrape their knees. They need to fall. They need to make mistakes. Every single lesson I've ever learned in my life was through mistakes that I made. Hardcore lessons were, the bigger the mistake, the bigger the lesson. And I think as parents, and I defy any parent to disagree with this, our whole agenda is, let me make your life easier. I'm going to tell you how to do this and let me help you get to this. And we get so frustrated when they don't listen, especially teenagers. I mean, and we're seeing it in the younger kids too. They're defiant. A lot of these little intuitive, sensitive kids, they're so defiant. I love it.
Yeah.
Because they're no longer following the norm, the protocol that was set before them.
No.
They're refusing school. They're refusing like the education the way it is. They're refusing to take politics the way they are. They're refusing to allow people to get away with behaving badly the way they are. And so they're really opening us up to have a bigger sort of scope as to what's actually happening in our environment. And they're the ones, the way I've seen it and the conversations I've had with my guides is that these kids are coming in to train us, to prepare us, so that by the time they get to, well, my daughter would have been my first lesson. Well, I was an indigo, she's a crystal, but the kids that are coming in now are like crystal magical crystal children, like they're just off the charts. But the warrior in us has to calm down and allow the changes, the evolution to take place, because as humans, we are evolving. All of us are psychic, every single one of us. Every single human on the planet is intuitive on some level. It's just some of us flex those muscles more than others, and naturally flex rather than, practice. So these kids are just coming in and opening up the doors and going, we're here, whether you like it or not. This is the way it's got to change. We've all known, things like education, that for a long time has been broken. The way it is set up as a cookie cutter sort of situation. And the classrooms just keep getting bigger, and the way they're teaching them, it's gone away from what it means to them. Like, what do they need out of this education? We've gone away from it so far. It's like these kids are just not going to take it anymore. And it's wonderful to see. And I think by the time your kids are my daughter's age, we're going to see such an evolution across the planet, because it's happening in every country right now. The uproar, the uprising, we don't know why we're upset, where a lot of us are blaming it on politics, the government, what have you. But we're feeling this overwhelm, this daunting, kind of feeling. And it's just, it's the change. Changes are coming, and we either accept them or we don't, but they're going to happen anyway.
Yeah, you can see them.
Yeah.
I think also too with this defiance, I mean, so many kids get pinned with oppositional defiant disorder, ADD, ADHD, autism. And I wonder how many times, and this isn't a judgment,
No.
only because or sensory processing disorder, which my son had, or reactive attachment disorder, which my son, all these diagnoses, which I'm not taking away from the mental health. I'm not by no way a doctor.
Right. Me either.
But I really, when I slowed down and I looked at the diagnoses and I really learned them differently, and then I applied them to myself, like Tara's got reactive attachment disorder all over the place before, sensory processing disorder. I'm sitting over here, can't understand why this child is a overly extreme picky eater and has a phobia of food to the point that he will run into outside.
Yeah.
When I'm sitting here gagging in social situations, or all these different things.
Yeah.
So when I applied the diagnoses to myself, that was really opening up. But the evolution is going to be insane, because these kids totally understand.
Oh, yeah.
And they can pick up on who else understands. So if you notice that you start opening your mind to it, you don't even need to say anything. I mean, I'll be on the beach and children will run up, and you can tell they've been watching,
yes,
or they've been listening.
Yeah.
And they show up and they ask questions, or neighbor children will come over and ask me questions and say, well, why don't you ask, just out of interest, like, why don't you ask your mom and dad about ghosts or spirits? Well, they're not going to answer me.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, all right. Don't get me in trouble, but this is what I think.
Yeah.
And take whatever piece you feel like.
Yeah.
And like circling back to the being in school and everything like that. Oh, no. I want to circle back with the kids essentially learning themselves. We're going through that here on a different scale.
Mm-hmm.
My son, being highly empathic as he is, likes to OD on sugar if he's in social situations. And I notice he does that to like get the high, like it gets him through getting through those social situations, whether it be, I don't know, anything, small stuff, big stuff, parties, going to the grocery store or whatever. But then it can translate into the house. And we've had to kind of just let it go, because I didn't want to produce a sneaking nature. which it kind of started doing. And I was like, no, you can have full access. And some people are going to hate me for this, and it's fine. Like, I'm not child abusing. Like, we have talks about it all the time, but it's since turned into sour stomachs. Yeah. And he's had them like 3 in a row from using this, which, you know, as a teen, it could be booze, you know what I mean? Using this to cope. Yeah. And but we do discuss it and stuff like that. And now he's walking out and going, my body can't take this. You know, yesterday he's like, my body can't take this. And he's learning how to heal it. Can I have peppermint tea? He's never asked for peppermint tea in his life.
He's listening, right? They're saying, yeah. So I think the best way to learn is to experience what the extreme is. And yes, my granddaughter, 8 years old, same thing, sugar addict. Like, we'll take a spoon and go into my sugar bowl and eat it. And I'm like, you can't. I have to hide it when she's here. But yes, they're addicted to sugar. And I think that's an awareness thing that they're bringing to the table for all of us, just how corruptive sugar is to us, where they're showing us exactly how off the charts one human can be on sugar. They don't act normally. They are crazy. Like, I refer it to, like, I call her cuckoo bananas. You're acting cuckoo bananas. What have you eaten? And she's like, I found your sweets. I have a sweet cupboard, but I put them up really high because I do want to be that grandma that can give them, you know, the odd treat here and there. I try to stick to things without sugar. My grandson will eat fruit all day long. Thank goodness, fruit and vegetables. But my granddaughter, sugar all the way. So I buy dark chocolate now with less sugar, like 90%. And at first she's like, this is gross, Emma. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's real chocolate. Like, keep trying it and you'll like it. So because there was nothing else in the house, she would go back and now she likes it. Yeah. And so you just have to start taking slowly. But I get where you're coming from. He had to learn what it was doing to his tummy. And my granddaughter, same thing, complains about her tummy. And I'm like, it's what you've eaten. Your body won't tolerate it, Peyton. It's just the way it is. Yeah. Like, you're right, Emma. You're right.
And so, I'm not saying it's over today, but no. What I do worry with a lot of people who probably have children who have not learned, who say are sensitive, or any children in general, is that they haven't burned themselves in the little stages with you being connected, and that it turns into bigger stuff, you know, like booze and sex and reactivity and relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, that's what he was using to try and counteract the emotions that he was bringing in and out. Yeah. And it was so interesting to me where he's in the shower and he's vomiting, you know, because of this sour stomach. And he's going, can you please help me do, he calls it a light bubble, because he wanted like a meditation, like to clear. And then he was like, can you get me peppermint tea? And that was all on his own. That was not anything. I was like, you know what? You're vomiting in the shower. So let's do a meditation. Nobody has ever said that in their life. You know?
These kids do. These kids do. They get it.
That was something that he pulled on his own because that's what he needed. So
like Psychic Kids United, we've got a quiz on there for parents who may not be as in tune with their kids as you are, like where do they fall on the spectrum. There's a quiz on there that they can take through www.psychickidsunited.com. And it will sort of take you through the areas. They're either psychic, medium, empath, or healer. And I suspect that you will find if you're going there to that site, your child chances are pretty high. Now, we had given this test to random kids that we didn't think were in tune, and they weren't. Just to make sure we had a litmus test, like we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just something random. But one of the things that we are going to be posting on there real soon for kids that aren't as in tune as your son, who is saying, Mommy, give me a light bubble and a peppermint tea, is a self-care. It's going to be a free video that's going to go up, and a grounding and protection video for kids of all ages, and moms as well and dads. So those two are hopefully going to be up in the next month on that site. But the importance of grounding and clearing and protecting. So the bubble is one, and the fact that he came up with that on his own, that's beautiful. The other one would be tell your kids to put a pretend suit of armor on with a shield and everything, and like going over their face, and that protective suit of armor protects them from any outside energy. It just kind of repels anything negative. Another one that I use and my grandkids use is cutting the cord. So I tell them, imagine you've got like a little umbilical cord that's invisible, that's attaching to every person that you connect with. So when you walk into school, there's like a million people, there's hundreds of kids there. That umbilical cord slices out and plugs into all the kids. So, and the teachers and the people that are cleaning there and everybody that's coming and going from the school, you're picking up and absorbing everything that they're feeling. And that's overwhelming. I was doing that as an adult and it was overwhelming. I didn't know that I could protect myself from that. So I tell people, make scissors with your fingers and go down to where your belly button is before you walk into like shopping or any kind of environment where there's multiple people, and just cut that cord. Just make the intention, I'm cutting my cord from outside influences. Just make that intention. And before you know it, you'll start to be able to go out in public more, and you'll be able to take your kids out more. And the protective bubble is a great one as well, for sure. But we do talk about that in these upcoming videos that are going to be released. So I'm excited about that.
Good, because my next question is about psychic kids, but I want to comment on that real quickly. Because I didn't have my awakening till later, it was kind of nice because I wasn't experiencing that when I was before going into parties, going into Thanksgiving, going into the grocery store. So then when my awakening happened, I was suddenly being able to understand what my son was going through. I was even starting to have dreams about it.
Yeah.
And so then, you know, because you start opening yourself up, well, so all those things start coming in too. So for parents, pay attention to that. If all of a sudden you start like going into holidays, you know, go into Thanksgiving, go into Christmas, go into parties, and you start feeling that, it was something really big for me to notice. I noticed it because I knew I was doing the development, but if I was starting to open without consciously doing the development, that might have confused me a bit.
Yeah.
But I do, now that we've brought up Psychic Kids United, well, we brought it up a few times, but I would love to know how you came to the creation of Psychic Kids United.
So I had years, like probably over 20 years ago, I used to keep I keep journals, and I started to write out different ideas I had about, you know, things I wanted to do in the future. And I just got really focused for a couple of months there. Like, what else do I want to do? What else do I want to do? What else is possible? And I kept, over the years, kept writing this idea of having a website for kids and parents to help them cope with being sensitive and what it meant to be sensitive, and training to help them evolve. Because after I woke up, then I was hungry for information. And, you know, I grew up in the library generation where nothing was online. It was all in the library. So you had to get to the library before it closed or before after school. And you would, you know, they would have limited information in the library about psychics, mediums, that kind of stuff. You didn't really want to be seen with that kind of information either, because there was a bit of a stigma. So it was really hard to find information. And, you know, I know in today's world, everything is on the internet, but, you know, I wanted to have it all in one place so that anybody coming in, if they landed into the psychic, the medium, the healer, or the empath world, that they would be able to resonate with the information on this page, and it would either give them a kickstart, jump start into understanding self, because that's huge. it's huge for every adult, let alone child. I think a big part of the problem with the sensitive kids today is that they don't know where they belong. They don't feel like they belong, and they don't know where they belong. And like we were talking about earlier with the CAP and all of that, my daughter had CAP, and she just felt like so different from her peers because they were getting stuff. They were understanding, the schoolwork way faster than her, and she didn't because she couldn't process it. It wasn't staying in her mind. A lot of these kids have that same type of, some of them are like off the charts brilliant, but well, actually most of them are off the charts brilliant. They have an inner wisdom and an older soul type of wisdom that they carry, but they're seemingly not, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not tuned in to normal stuff like normal kids would be, right? So it makes us feel sort of overwhelmed for them. But psychic kids, the whole point of that is to ensure that there's a safe place full of learning, not just for the kids, but for the parents as well. And we're working really hard. We had a lot of learning curves. Working with computers, not my friend, and I'm not gonna lie, I've been forcing myself to learn so much, and I finally figured it out, and I have a system now. So we've been writing courses, and it's just a case of getting them into the video format. Once I figured that out, now everything's like all stations go, but it's been a learning curve to get exactly what we wanted, because between Margarett and I, we have over 100 years of experience in this area with our lives, right? And we wanted to make sure that we were giving everything from, what it means to be intuitive, to how to ground and protect, how to speak with spirit, how to overcome fears, how to avoid drama. I mean, we wanted to cover all the bases that will help them unfold their superpowers, because that's how we see it. This is a superpower. It's not a negative on any level. It's a huge positive for all of us. Not so that we can create like a little army of psychics, with the crystal balls and stuff. It's more so they can control their lives and have a real handle on what it means to them to be intuitive and grounded, and it's just exciting. I am so excited because there's a lot of kids coming up that are just going to change the world for so much better. We're already seeing yoga in schools. I mean, that's such an epic change. That just started in my granddaughter's school, and just the meditation and yoga. And I was like, wow, my mind is blown. I'm so excited because it's making such a difference for her to have that in school. So yeah, there's a lot of things. So psychic kids will be a small little, hopefully, place to reach out for parents that just need a little bit more support, and also for kids to help them feel more inclusive, that they do belong in the world, and that they do make sense, and that their powers are not weird. They are very special, and they are absolutely going to help them instead of hinder them in life, which I think is what a lot of kids that are younger feel, sadly.
Oh, yeah.
They really do.
Huge. I think also too, for me, it was like validation that this existed, I mean, that's why I made the podcast, was, or even validation, like I didn't know this existed. And then when people started relaying to me things, well, does he do this? Or does she do that? Or they're just telling a story about what was going on with them. And I was like, wait a second, that happens to me. And like, that's why I had the podcast, is not to tell people what to do with their lives or anything like that. Is
exactly.
This is what's happening over here, and this is what's worked for us. These were things that we explored. And I don't even care if people don't notice it in their lives. They may be just listening just because they're interested, but then also too, they'll walk out into the world and they might look at their nephew differently.
Exactly.
You might look at your child with autism differently, your grandchild with autism. the child that's nonverbal, well,
Yeah.
they very well could be communicating to
Oh,
you.
they're totally communicating.
Yeah.
Nonverbal children. Well, I lived in Scotland for many years, and I was working with an autistic child who was from 9 years old to 10 years old, and he was nonverbal, and I knew exactly what he wanted when he wanted it. I knew because I was listening, and I think any parent that has a nonverbal child can get, for the most part, well, any parent with any child, if they're paying attention, can understand what their kids need. But yeah, these kids are communicating in ways. I just watched a program. Oh my goodness, I'll have to message it to you because I'll have to look it up on Netflix under my list. And it was about changing the diets of kids that are, well, it wasn't just children. It was one of the studies was on a child with like autism, an older lady, a gentleman, and a younger lady, and they all went on this no sugar, no carb kind of diet, like a keto diet, and they basically just changed and transformed this little girl who was non-responsive, very autistic, started communicating within 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Just changing the diet. So the diet is so important, um, for these kids as well. But having an understanding and an awareness is the chain link, right, to
Yeah.
getting to understanding them.
I
And
couldn't force the diet though. I couldn't, almost like, hence why we had the conversation that we had.
yeah,
They had to be on board. It had to be like from them. So the more I forced, you're creating scarcity. So the more you wanted, and that's why.
I'll get you that film because this little
Yeah.
girl only ate, or like the fish, the little orange fishes. French fries, I think, was the other thing, and something else. I can't remember. But these were the only things she would eat. So they just fed it to her because that was what she would eat. And she would like stand on windowsills and pick away at her food. Very non-responsive, wouldn't make eye contact. And it took them about 4 days. She wouldn't eat. She refused everything. She threw it at them. She refused it all. And after 4 days, like, they were going out of their minds, her parents. But
Especially
they're
because she's nonverbal.
Exactly. And literally what happened was this child just got so hungry that she started to take the broccoli and, the different things that she would normally have just, thrown at them. She started to eat it. And because the palate had been sort of cleansed to having that 4 days off of all the carbs and the sugar, she was now starting to actually enjoy the food and started to have better energy, not hectic energy like some autistic kids have, where they're very within, they go internally. It was like turning a light bulb off in this child's mind. It was amazing. But I mean, that's a small part of the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to make it all about that, but everything helps. And I get, as a parent, you can't force anybody. You feel like you're creating a capital punishment on them if you tell them to do something against their will. The key is be honest with them. And I said that from the very beginning with my daughter. I said, if you eat this, it's not going to work out good for you. I already know it's going to make your tummy sore. You know this, so you have to listen to your tummy. What is your tummy telling you? And go with that sort of direction. Make it more about them feeling like they're making their own decisions, but you got to coach them, through it. And I know it's not easy. Trust me.
No, I just found that if I was more curious with them about anything, how do you feel when when you're with this person? How do
Yeah.
you, where does it feel in your body? A lot of times with Dominic in the beginning, it was a lot of fear of everything.
Yes.
Fear, 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 fear. But that was also where I was at too.
Yep. Totally.
Like, I was so scared that he was broken. They were, things were broken. I was broken. That was a big thing. I was really worried that I was broken. So that's what he was so worried that something was going to break him. He was broken. And yeah, like it's a bigger picture thing.
for
But
sure.
yeah, the more we get them to learn themselves, gosh, what, like, if I had learned myself earlier on.
I know.
And I feel like I was like ahead of the curve too. Like I felt like I knew myself more than a lot of people.
Yeah. Well,
I
we
was
all
wrong.
do. Every single one of us. You know what? I have learned that I don't know everything, and that I will learn and learn and learn till the day I die. I know that now. In my 20s, I thought I knew it all. I really did. I thought I was ahead of the game because of my intuition and my psychic nature. I just assumed, well, I know and I will know. But oh boy, did I not know.
You have
No.
to learn to untangle your ego with it.
Yeah, that's huge, untangling the ego. And that's where, not as a parent, try not to take it so personally. I think if we can release ourselves of that obligation as a parent to any kid, let alone a sensitive kid, releasing ourselves from the obligation of taking it personally, it's a lesson for both of you because you've never both been in that situation before. No matter what the situation is, it doesn't matter. You're both learning as you go.
Yeah.
You were never a parent before. You were never a parent. Every year they grow. You were never a parent to that age kid before. And like your daughter will be different, but you'll still be learning with her differently because she's going to be a different kid. So just never take it personally. That somebody gave me that advice when I was younger, and I literally took that and ran with it, and it just made life so much easier when I finally figured that out, when I accepted it. But it's hard. It's hard when we're struggling for answers and struggling for results, or we just want peace in our family, in our home. We just want order. As a lot of moms want order because we like organization, most mothers, right? And kids are the opposite of order. They're chaos, right? Like, let's face it. And that's what makes them beautiful, because they're so random and it's wonderful. I can see that now as a grandmother, whereas my daughter's like, when I was growing up, if I made a mess like that, you'd be like, get this cleaned up, and you'd be raising your voice. And I'm like, well, it's different now, and I don't know why it's different. I don't care if they make a mess. I'll just clean it up at the end. Whereas when she was a child, I was running around trying to tidy up after her all the time. Weird, right? Like the things you learn and evolve from. But a lot of it, like you said, ego, huge.
Yeah. Ego, and it loves to change form.
It does.
Loves to change form, that ego. And loves to like say, well, it's for the best interest of the family. And so that one I have hard time. I struggle with untangling, but I know it's there.
Yeah.
So where can my listeners find all your work?
Probably the best place is on Facebook, through Liz Throp Psychic or Psychic Kids United on Facebook. So Throp is Throp, and Psychic Kids United also has a website, www.psychickidsunited.com. And that's the one if your listeners go there, they can take that free quiz. That's available now. And just get a handle where you fall in the spectrum and where they fall in the spectrum of sensitivity, and get a real handle on, and there's little videos up there as well to kind of explain what it means to be psychic, what it means to be a medium, what it means to be an empath. That's probably the best places to catch me and connect with me.
Perfect. And you have courses coming out soon?
I do. Well, I'm actually doing one right now with Margarett, who is my partner at Psychic Kids, that we're hosting out of our home, actually. That's a 7-week course, and it's all about tuning in to your intuition. We're going to be holding another one that's kind of the next phase from that in the fall. And I'm a little busy. I got a lot of stuff going on. I have my own YouTube channel as well, The Gifted Ones. So that's a fun one because that touches on different, I interview psychics and mediums, kind of like what you're doing. Mm-hmm. A lot of fun. And one's being released tonight, actually, I'm excited about. It's all about death and religion. So kind of like touching on some really touchy topics, right? Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. So, it's it's a good life I have. I'm excited about it. I'm very blessed that I get to be doing what I'm passionate about. So
Good. I'm glad. Well, I hope that that everything goes well, and I'm so glad that we've connected and that I can show Psychic Kids United for you and on my end.
thank you so much. It's been so great. You know, that from that first email from you where you're like, would you be interested? I'm like, absolutely. And I'm so glad that we have connected because you've already put me in touch with other things that I didn't know about. So I'm excited about learning about those.
Oh, good. I'm so glad because you know what, that's what I've found with other psychics and people in the field, that they're like, because this is what I felt. I had no resources. There was no resources. Well, I'm finding more, and I am able to be, these psychics or people are coming to see them, and they have these kids, and I have nothing to give them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I need it anyway, so I might as well collect it. And
Brilliant.
yeah, I love it. I love right now. This is like, I love being in this position.
You're exactly where you need to be, Tara. Exactly. And you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And thank you to your children for waking you up. Thank you to them, because
Yes.
it has evolved you, right? And
Yeah.
we'd never have met had this never happened. So I'm excited.
I know. I'm excited too. Well, I will be talking to you soon.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.